there's something a little bit. To me, there's always something a bit melancholy about looking back. And what energizes me is more like much more about looking forward. And but then getting prizes also makes it easier for you to make the next film. So that's good.
We will look forward later, but I'm going to force you to look back as part of this sort of masterclass. I just wanted to talk a bit about your early interaction with film, because your dad was a screenwriter. And did he direct a bit as well?
He directed various films.
Okay.
When he was Jewish, and he spent the war in South America, in Buenos Aires, and he was he was involved with the Free French, and he also directed a couple of films in Latin America, not in France.
And say when you were 10, 12, or a teenager, did you sit down and watch films with him, or were you discovering them on TV channels at night on your own?
It's I grew up in the countryside, not in Paris. So so it's not like I had like an easy access to any kind of cinematheque or whatever. So yeah, I mean I would discover the films I loved. I discovered them on TV, on a small TV of the time in black and white. There was no color. Color came a little later. I mean, color came when I was like 8 to 10. So used to, I suppose, but still, I mean, the classics were in black and white, and my experience of going to to watching movies was going to the local theaters, small multiplexes in suburban Paris.
And were there certain films that stuck out when you were very young, or adolescent?
That stuck out. I don't know. I mean, my early memories of watching films, same as I suppose all the kids in my generation. It was like big movies, like Ben-Hur, in big theaters in Paris, or West Side Story. West Side Story played for years in theaters in Paris. So
you're a West Side Story fan.
But then I don't know, for some reason the movies I remember watching on TV as a kid were usually movies that are disturbing for kids. Like scary. I remember watching Jules Dassin's Rififi, by Buñuel, those kind of movies that even when I remember them, they still scare me. I think it's also a bit different from what attracted me to cinema, because if those movies had been my inspiration, they were, they had this kind of post-war darkness, gloom to them. That's not what I've been looking for in movies. I mean, what has attracted me in movies is how they connect with real life, with nature, with beauty, with light, whatever.
I mean, I think it's very interesting that you wrote for a while for Cahiers du Cinéma, which is the most important film magazine in France. And while you were there, I think you wrote a lot about sort of American cinema in a way that they hadn't been writing about before.
No, but I came at Cahiers du Cinéma at a very interesting moment, in a sense that the magazine had been involved in Maoist politics. I mean, luckily I had not been involved in Maoist politics, but they had been, and they had been, mostly writing about, I don't know, what Chairman Mao said about filmmaking in his, in his talks about art. They had been, they were very involved in the Maoist trend in French leftism of the time. I had been involved in French leftism, but at least not in the totalitarian blend of it. I was much more involved in more like counterculture. I was certainly more influenced by painting than by or pop music or whatever of the time than by the politics, the political theory of the time. So when I came into Cahiers du Cinéma, it's because they had been opening up to younger writers. So they needed young cinephiles to bring some kind of renewal of whatever their politics and their relationship to cinema had been. So everything was open because they had not been writing about cinema for years. So all of a sudden everything was new. You know, you could. I remember, you know, just going with a few other writers to LA, and we made like 2 special issues of the magazine about modern American cinema. We all of a sudden we interviewed French actors. You know, there hadn't been an interview with a French actor for years in the magazine before that. So for me it was great because I was a kid and I was discovering world cinema, international cinema, as a journalist. But to me it was more like film school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Asian cinema as well at that time?
Asian cinema is, you know, it's the big event. I mean, you know, we were discussing my career writing for Cahiers du Cinéma. That's like 5 years, which is a lot. I mean, I wrote a lot of stuff during those 5 years, but like the big event during those years was the discovery of Chinese cinema. It was not on the map. You know, I mean, there was a vague awareness that there had been, you know, Chinese filmmakers, but you know, I mean, like the name that stood out was like Bruce Lee. You know, so it's the film was showing in like at least in Paris, in cinemas, like for very popular theaters for migrants. Because the Hong Kong movies were popular in North Africa, in Africa, so the guys who, you know, who watched those movies in their countries, they wanted more, and but it was completely off the map, and gradually, thanks to Marco Müller, who later, you know, was the head of the Venice Film Festival, and who organized the first big retrospective of Chinese cinema in 1981 in Torino, all of a sudden, you know, just people became aware that not only Chinese cinema had a past, but it also had a present, and you had young filmmakers who were starting to make films, and you had really exciting genre filmmaking happening here and there. So, you know, I was immediately attracted to it also because I had also been I had an interest in Chinese thought, in Chinese art, etc. So when the door of Chinese cinema opened up, I just rushed in, and with my friend Charles Tesson, who now is the head of the Critics Week at Cannes, we dedicated a whole issue of Chinese cinema to Chinese, to Hong Kong cinema actually. And I met at that time Ho Xiaoshen, Edouard Biang, who were young filmmakers. They were beginning, and I was like one of the first Western writers to write about their work.
So all this writing about all this interesting cinema, I guess, how did that crystallize for you that you were going to direct? And did some
I wanted to direct. I wanted to direct. I mean, I only did things. I mean, I felt weird writing about films because it had not crossed my mind that I would go that route. I mean, to me, what was exciting was making my own short films. But I think I realized that I kind of needed just to focus my ideas on cinema, to put it that way. I mean, I think I came from being from visual arts. I mean, I painted, I drew, I did graphism, and I think that my ideas about cinema were very naive, they were very vague, and writing for Cahiers du Cinéma helped me just make sense of you know, or even discussing with filmmakers I admired, thanks to the magazine. It just helped me just make sense of what I wanted to do as a filmmaker, but that was the one reason I was writing. I mean, I never lost that perspective.
And with your first feature, Disorder, 1986?
86.
Yeah. It's kind of got some elements of film noir, it's got like a punk angle. I mean, why was that the right sort of film for your first feature?
I think that what differentiated me in the end with other French filmmakers of my generation, and eventually from filmmakers before me, was that instead of being influenced by jazz, I was interested by punk rock, which was a big step forward. I mean, I think that, you know, when I was music was always the big thing for me. When I grew up in the 70s, I had this sense that the energy of the moment, what really mattered as some kind of poetry of my time, was rock and roll in a way or another. Politics, experimental cinema, and music. But music had this immediate relationship to the present. You know, music is an echo of what is happening right here, right now, and that was the most exciting for me. Movies were not that exciting. They were less exciting. Movies had been exciting at the time of the New Wave and when of the French Nouvelle Vague, I mean, and the way it echoed all around the world, and all of a sudden they were in touch with something vibrant, vital. In the 70s, it was music. Movies were a bit secondary. So when I started making films, it was immediately with the notion of trying to capture something in film of the energy that had influenced me in music. And my roots were as much in the history of cinema, because yes, of course, you know, cinema has been such an important part of my life, always, but still, the energy was the energy of music.
Is that still the same? I mean, you've worked with some great bands on your films, right? You know, Sonic Youth and...
Sure. Yes and no. I mean, I don't have the same relationship, whatever music is happening right now, to the kind of music I was listening to when I was 14 or 15.
But is music still a big part of your life?
Yeah, it is. I listen to a lot of music, but it's not that vital. It's less vital. It depends. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But it's less of an influence. Also because now music comes as a package. You know, it comes with the video, with the music video, which as an art form is not that exciting to me. You know, it's like a pre-chewed images for music. What influenced me with the energy of music was the fact that it didn't come pre-packaged with its own images. It came with a look. Yes, sure. Like in the mid '70s, all of a sudden, you know, the way the bands looked, the graphic design around whatever the Sex Pistols were doing or the Clash was a certain part of it. But still, in terms of how to visualize that music, it was up to you. And now it's. You know, again, maybe if I related a bit more to whatever is happening in music videos, I would be more interested. But ultimately, I genuinely don't. So it's I kind of lose a part of what interested me in music.